The portal giveth and the portal taketh away as well. Unfortunately, we're in the taketh away stage right now. We'll get into the giveth stage a little bit as the portal does open tomorrow, January 2nd. However, we are in the takeaway stage as we do have David Olano and Cole Rusk, the two big names that are entering the portal from this Illinois football team. There are other names as well that we'll talk about, but we're going to start with those two here on Talk Illini, part of the Orange and Blue news site with the On3 network. Please do give us a like and subscribe here on the channel. It really helps us out. And then go on over to Orange and Blue News to look up all your different news and things like that for the Illini football team, the Illini basketball team, everything else. You can find it all there at orangeandbluenews.com. And you can find Carson's work over there as well, as Carson Bounds is here with us to talk through the two recent portal entries and then also talk about some of the other ones that we've seen. So, Carson, let's start with David Olano. David Olano, past two seasons at Illinois, he's was a 86% field goal kicker, 12 of 13 from 20 to 29 yards, 13 of 14 from 30 to 39 yards, only three misses from 40 to 49 yards, 11 to 14, and then he was 1 of 2 from 50 plus. Did not have any 50 plus kicks this year, but he did have one 2 years ago. David Olano is obviously somebody that Brett Bielema trusts a lot. He has put the ball, I would say, in his hands, but I guess on his foot multiple times for game-winning situations this season. He's been a fantastic part of this team, and we're sad to see him go. What do you make of David Olano moving on and going elsewhere?
Yeah, it's a huge loss. Olano was one of the first recruits of the Bielema era, and part of his legacy. And one thing we don't see a ton of anymore is he was one of the last blue shirt recruits, which is when a kid comes in a like say a spring period, early enrolls, and then they get put on scholarship the following semester. And for a kicker to be on scholarship within their first 2 semesters of being in school is huge. Brett Bielema and honestly the entire staff had a lot of trust in Olano. I got to see him in practice for 2 years, so seeing his success the last 2 seasons since I've left the program is not particularly surprising. He's a kid who'd routinely hit 60, 65 yards just in warm-ups in practice. Just an unreal leg, very consistent as well. And he's a nice kid. It's sad to see him go, but it makes a lot of sense for him. There's been rumors that he's gotten a pretty lucrative offer to go elsewhere, and he'll probably get other lucrative offers as well. That's what happens when you perform to the level that he did for the last 2 seasons. But yeah, he leaves with Illinois with a great legacy. He's that USC game this year, as well as 29-yard field goal to decide the bowl game this year. It's a huge loss for Illinois, but it's one that if you need to go out and find a kicker, you can. I don't think it's going to be easy or honestly realistic to find a kicker as good as David Olano, but they can certainly get another good kicker in the portal, just like anyone else can. But yeah, David Olano leaves Illinois with kind of a legacy of being a great player and a legacy of being a deciding factor on the right side of a lot of winning efforts over the last 2 years.
Yeah, David Olano is going to be sorely missed at Illinois. Definitely, a lot of good feelings about him, what he's done for the program, and I know that there's going to be a lot of angst with this one, especially with mentioning the lucrative NIL deal that he is most likely going to get going elsewhere. We'll obviously see how things shape out. There's a lot of offers and things like that that get passed around, offered, and then decisions get made. So I always say nothing is ever for certain in recruiting nowadays. Nothing is ever for certain in transfer portal nowadays either. So we'll see how this all works out. But if it does hold true, I don't. I mean, we can talk about this for a moment if you want, Carson. I don't think we need to make the whole video about it, but I don't think Illinois is in a bad place with their NIL, but I do think that they are in a place where they don't have the spare money to go out and offer some of the biggest deals in the nation to a kicker. And for David Olano, the way that he's performed the past 2 years at Illinois, especially this year with multiple game winning kicks, he's going to get a deal like that from one of these larger programs that has just much more NIL in their pocket there. So do you have any thoughts on the NIL situation for Illinois when it comes to football? Obviously the basketball program brings in a lot of top tier talent, but with football, I don't think it's as bad as some people make it out to be, but I also, would not classify Illinois as like top tier NIL in college football or anything like that.
Yeah, for certain. I think we could take what Coach Bielema says at face value when he speaks on the NIL of the program. He talked about it at signing day. We were probably a bottom 2 or 3 NIL school, and just like school as far as being able to pay players in the Big Ten a couple of years back. And Coach Bielema said on signing day, we're probably middle of the pack now. We're in that like probably 8 to 12 range. We're in the middle of the conference. We can't offer Ohio State money, but we also probably pay better than Purdue. I mean, it's it's a good place to be. And honestly, middle of the Big Ten is still realistically top 40 maybe in all of college football. It's not like Illinois is hurting for money here, but there are going to be 25, 30 programs in the country who, if they're willing to spend more on a certain position than Illinois, you're going to lose some guys. And that's just how it goes. I mean, but yeah, no, Illinois is in a fine spot. We saw the last 2 seasons, 10 wins and 9 wins respectively, with, we'll say top 40 money in the sport. They're doing plenty of winning with a relatively healthy budget. Could it be more, and could they benefit from it being a little higher? Yeah, but they're not broke. Illinois is not broke, and they're doing just fine with where they're at.
Totally agree. And I think, when we put into perspective the history of Illinois football and everything else, and I'm not saying it's a bad history by any means, I'm just saying when you put into perspective kind of where Brett Bielema has things at, a top 40 program, if as long as the wheels don't fall off and they're, considered an outside the top 40 program or something like that for numerous years, I don't think there's any questions that need to be made. Obviously, some frustrations when you have losses and things like that, those always come. The coaches get frustrated too. They don't want to lose either, but moving on, you get a top 40 NIL program, and you're going to be set up for success in college football. Maybe not national championship success, but success in contending for the playoffs and being in the top half of your conference, which is good news there. So another transfer portal entry that Illinois had was Cole Rusk. Cole Rusk obviously transferred in 2024, had the injury, did not play in 2024, but he played in 2025, had 19 receptions, 217 yards, 1 touchdown catch. He was a good contributor for Illinois this year. He wasn't, an outstanding playmaker or anything like that, with all respect to him, but he was a good contributor. He was somebody that Luke Altmaier relied on and was a consistent target for him at times. But this is one that, people were very excited when he came in 2024. Looked like he could have some good success in 2025, especially when you saw some of the games that he had. He had nearly 100 yards against Ohio State, at 68 yards in that one, had the Washington game with 56 yards as well, but just never really found the consistency that you might have wanted there. It's obviously he's a good player. He's going to go on elsewhere and most likely play, but we'll see what happens. What's your thoughts on Cole Rusk moving on here, Carson?
Yeah, he's a kid. When he committed to Illinois, I believe his dad wrestled here. He did, I think, 1 season at Eastern Michigan, that went to Murray State, was an FCS All-American a couple years back. And Illinois was his favorite school as a kid. He always dreamed of being in an an Illini, and he committed here when he got the opportunity. And you know, if he hadn't torn, I believe his ACL, it was 2 years back, I think he maybe could have had a little bit bigger of an impact. But he certainly wasn't a bad player by any means. He was a rotational tight end. He had a great value in the receiving game. He's definitely, undoubtedly, the best receiving tight end on the team this year. But there were some limitations as far as scheme fit. I don't think he was the most effective blocker with the specific types of blocks they were asking him to make, especially downfield. He's more of a receiving first tight end. Usually you'll see, just like with the tight end makeups, tight ends are usually really good blockers. They're really good receivers. And if you got a dude that has both, they're probably a first or second round pick. That's not quite Cole Rusk, but he is a very talented receiver. And so I think he's going to go probably transfer to, a group of five or another lower tier power four school. And I think he's going to make a big impact in the receiving game. But I just don't think the scheme that Illinois runs necessarily fit his game the best. We saw throughout the season a lot of the stuff that he got on the field for was like specifically pass first. And it became a little predictable. Like, you knew Illinois was passing the ball when Cole Rusk was on the field most of the time this year. He didn't play a lot of pass blocking snaps. So, he's a great kid. I just don't think it was necessarily the right fit here. But he's a kid that he rooted for Illinois. He was all in on Illinois while he was here, and he, is left in a nice manner as well. So Illinois fans, in my opinion, should support him and root for him wherever he goes moving forward.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, this is not a situation where, he's doing Illinois dirty or anything like that. And even in those situations, I would not, tell people don't, actively dislike somebody or anything like that. Unfortunately, we're just kind of getting used to this new world of college football where players come and players go. It is what it is. And Cole Rusk spent 2 years here at Illinois and made an impact this year. And like you said, root for him wherever he goes. Tanner Arkin was the much more utilized tight end this season. He had over 600 snaps on the year. Cole Rusk was third, right there behind Abney there for the tight end room. So Cole Rusk, good piece of it, but like you said, a rotational tight end, and the snaps definitely speak to that as well. All right, well, let's wrap this up with just some other guys in the transfer portal currently for Illinois. Illinois has some depth pieces and guys like that have entered the portal. We'll see what happens with other guys, but right now, as we stand on January 1st, around 2:30 p.m., what are your thoughts on some of the other players that have entered the portal for the Illini football team, Carson?
Yeah, there's a few quick hitters that I want to touch on. Tyshawn Griffin is the first of them. He's out of Morgan Park High School. He was a second-year player here. He tore his, I believe, ACL as well during his senior year of high school. So he came into Illinois early enrollee, just injured. He never really got to hit the ground running. He was a very talented receiver and defensive back in high school, but I think he kind of lost a step just because of the injury, and it took him a long time to get up to speed. And by the time he got up to speed, he had been passed in the depth chart by probably 6 different receivers. He's a kid. If he came in with good health, he probably could have made an impact, but he just, he started behind the 8 ball due to, circumstances that were not within his control. But he seems like a great kid. We broke the news during the bowl game 2 days ago now that he was going to be transferring. So Doug Buchan had that first. And, you know, again, we don't know quite the type of schools he's going to go to yet, but he's a kid, was all in Illinois. Circumstances didn't work out for him, but another kid, you want to see them succeed. And another kid like that as well is East St. Louis product Antoine Jojo Hayden. Jojo was one of the first commits in the Bielema era, under Bielema's first full recruiting class. And he's a kid on Twitter, on Instagram, just in public in general. He's been one of the most pro Illinois recruits that we've had in a long time. He's one of the big player-led recruiters. He's a guy that he was frequently a host for visitors over the years when they've come to the school. He's helped bring a lot of recruits to Illinois. And he's a guy, he's just been a great representative of the program. He kind of lost some reps later down the home stretch of the season this year. Just other freshmen, Grant Bierman is one that comes to mind who maybe we're starting to jump him on the depth chart a little bit. He's a kid. He played rotational reps at outside linebacker and a little bit of inside linebacker at times. A good Illini player, probably going to transfer to a slightly lower tier program and be a high impact starter, day one next year. And he's a kid, I personally will be rooting for moving forward.
For sure. I was just checking. We just about an hour ago got news. Looks like Kaleb Patterson is entering the transfer portal as well. Carson, this one's pretty fresh, so I'm not gonna expect a lot, with it pretty fresh. You got any thoughts on Kaleb Patterson going into the portal?
Yeah, he's another guy. I believe he was the number 3 ranked JUCO safety at his high school. Oh, not high school, in his recruiting class back in 2022. He's a kid, very hard worker. Came in, never quite like hit the ground running, but he did just work his way into rotational snaps a couple years back, and then last year and this year he was a starter. I mean, he's a guy very competitive. He was, in my opinion, unfairly the kind of on the receiving end of a lot of criticism from Illinois fans who spoke on the Illinois defense. I frankly think he maybe wasn't used in a way that would set him up for success. We ran a lot of zone schemes that didn't play to his favor. And he's a guy, if he's on, the 3rd or 4th best receiver from another team, he's probably a very, very good player. But there were times where, he was matched up this season against a Jeremiah Smith or the receiver, the receiver from USC who won the Blitnikoff. He's a talented kid, but if you're asking him to play 20 snaps against either of those guys, you're not setting him up for success. And so he was on the receiving end of, I mean, frankly, just bad matchups throughout his career. But he was still a good player, and I think he's going to go. I believe, got 1 year of eligibility. He's going to make an impact wherever he lands, and he's another kid. You never heard him complain, despite some of the tough challenges he had to face throughout his time in Illinois. I'm sure he'll be just fine wherever he goes moving forward.
For sure. Yeah, no disrespect at all to Kaleb Patterson or anything like that, but like you mentioned, there were some fans' frustrations and stuff, and so you move on, you go elsewhere, and it looks like that Illinois is going to try to figure some things out with this secondary come next year. Not that it was necessarily the worst thing in the world, but there were obviously some frustrations for fans, and there were depth concerns and things like that this season. So we'll see what Illinois is able to do in the portal, losing him and a few other guys going off to the next level and graduating and stuff like that. We'll have to see. So Carson, anything else with the transfer portal guys leaving Illinois that you want to mention before we get out of here?
No, that's the bulk of it for now. I'm looking forward to seeing who we bring in. I think at this point the bulk of the overturn is probably done. There'll be a couple stragglers that trickle in over the next day or two, but for the most part, I think we've seen the vast majority of departures for now.
Very good. And we will do our very best here on Talk Illini to update you with every single entry or every single addition that is made through the transfer portal. I can't promise that we'll have a video done for every single player, but we will definitely do videos recapping things, stuff like that. Big name players that Illinois signs, we will for sure come on here and talk about those, whether it's me, Sonny, Carson, whoever it might be. We'll be on here to talk about it. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button to Talk Illini, and go on over to Orange and Blue News, where you can find them with the On3 network covering all of this as well. Doug, Carson, a lot of great content over there that they produce. So thank you for watching. We appreciate it. Have a good one.